The tension on this job was high. If these forms aren't perfectly tight, the concrete will seep out and the entire wall will fail. Even worse, if they're not strong enough, the massive pressure of the concrete will blow them apart. We struggled with this, but I figured out a solution. Stick around to see how we got it done. Odell Complete Concrete, David Odell here. And if you had watched part 1, you'd know how we got to this point with that concrete pad down at the bottom of that 7-foot hole. Part 1 shows the dig out and how we got the concrete down there. Today, we're going to start framing up and tying rebar on these walls because we're doing a formed, poured in place enclosure down here. And it could be used for a lot of things. It could be a tornado shelter, hurricane shelter, maybe even a bomb shelter. It's a safe place, it could be even a safe house. But in this case, it's going to be used for a sandblast pit. It also could actually be used for a septic tank. All you'd have to do is put a separator wall in there and then have it, leach over the top, have that wall shorter than the outside walls. So you'd have one sediment tank and then flow to the next, and then you'd have your leach filled after that. But in this case, we're just going to build a box, a concrete vault. So this pad that we're setting down here on the bottom is perfectly parallel, perpendicular to the building. The reason for that is because there's going to be a slab that goes around the outside of this so that it will enclose the top of this, because it is catching sand. You don't want any moisture to get in there. Otherwise, the sand's not going to flow like it should. So the way we're building off of this bottom pad, we left about 6 inches over on the outside edges so we could get a 2x4 or a 2x6 plate. We're tap conning those in. We're using 5/16 tap cons, roto hammer. We're tightening those up. Then we're going to build each panel separately above ground and slide them down into the hole. We're going to do the outside wall first. We've got the rebar at about 1 foot, 18-inch centers, somewhere in that neighborhood. This is all 1/2-inch rebar. We could have built this out of block, but concrete's always better, especially poured in place like this. You never have to worry about water seeping through, especially because we're doing a 4,500 PSI. So that makes it more impervious to water. And block, typically your best block you're going to be able to buy is probably like a 2,500 PSI block. And then your grout typically is not going to be a 4,500 PSI. And you got a lot of seams on block. This is all one monolithic pour. The only seam is where the wall meets the slab. You could waterproof that seam too. They do have water membranes that could be poured in place from the slab. Then the wall pours over that, and then you have a rubber piece in the middle. That would do the trick for that. But out here, we got 5 inches max rain. Not real concerned about water, to be honest. But if you were, you'd want to build it the way I build. So here's the panels. We just stacking them up on top of each other. That way we can just keep replicating. Here's my new Milwaukee driver. So I have a duplex driver, which is what I'm driving there. And I also have the common nail driver, which made it really come in handy on this one, because since I didn't have a good overcut on the dirt, I had very minimal space to work behind. I needed that nail driver because I couldn't really swing a hammer in there. I mean, it was even hard pulling the nails, to be honest. Without a nail bar, I don't think they could have been pulled. And here's the situation. We let the 2x4s run wild for a couple reasons. It offers a safety, like a handrail, so you don't fall into the hole when we start going up on top. Also, we're saving the length of those 2x4s for future jobs. Here's the elevation. So we cut this plywood. I think we took a foot off of it, so it's still about 7 foot high. So we still got good full sheets to work with for future locations. And I have that top 2x4 at the top of plywood. That way we could actually walk along there. I'm going to run 2x12s across to get across that trench into the hole. So we've already got our holes, and those holes that are drilled, they're 1/2-inch holes. That's what you need for snap ties, about 1/2-inch hole. Any bigger than that, and the plug that gives you the spacing on the wall width will just push through the hole, so you can't go bigger than 1/2 inch. Otherwise, when you tighten your wedges, it's going to crunch the wall. They're all at about 16-inch centers in both directions, except off of the bottom coming up, and we started with 1 foot off the bottom, and then we went 16s. Now, if you look at that corner, how that's locked in, that's an important technique that's going to secure your corners from ever blowing out. So now that we have the outside perimeter set, now we can move on into the inside. The plywood that I got it was really badly bowed. I probably should have not got it and got some straight plywood to begin with. We were able to straighten it out, but it did make it a little more challenging. So if you're going to do this, try to get some nice straight plywood that's not pre-bent like this. And I got this at Lowe's. This is 1/2-inch plywood. Really, you know, in a wall like this, you should use at least a 3/4 inch thickness in your plywood. But we saved some money with this 1/2-inch. So the real question is on pour day, will this 1/2-inch plywood hold up to the 900 pounds of pressure per square foot that the concrete will create when we start putting it in the hole? But don't worry, you'll be able to see that coming soon. So we had to bust our panels on the inside in half in order to get them through the snap ties. We couldn't get the full panel down in there and slide it over the snap tie at the same time. So we did half and half. Then we just spliced them back together. We just laid a 2x4 on top of the snap ties to bring the two sides and marry them together. So when we're nailing those wedges on, they're designed to go on. They start loose, but the way that they're cut, the steel on those, they go from about 1/4 inch to about 1 inch width. So when they say wedge, it's kind of what it means. It's you're wedging it on there. And the further you drive that wedge, the tighter it gets. And it can only get so tight because on the inside of the wall, which you really don't see, there's 2 plastic cones. There it is. See those plastic cones? That's holding your spacing equal all the way across. So you really can't over tighten. It's going to stop as soon as that plastic gets tight in there. Well, that's how those wedges go on. So these boards, they don't have to be nailed, but it does make it a little bit easier when you're moving the panels around that they don't fall off while you're trying to get your wedge in there. It's because I had such an easy nailing system, it didn't hurt for me to drop a nail here and there. Here's some spacers, some spreaders I decided to put at the top. Because remember when I was saying the plywood was bowed? Well, it kind of came into play. It still wanted to curl at the top. Concrete may have spread it out, you know, but I wanted it perfect before I started pouring. So I put the wedges, put some cross ties to keep it right where I wanted it. You could kind of see when we got that outside wall up how nice and tight those corners fit. The inside corner was a little bit tricky to get to fit as well as the outside. And that could be for a lot of reasons. Maybe the concrete that it was setting on wasn't perfectly level. Maybe it was a little out of square. So joining the corners on the inside, I came up with a nice remedy for that. And it wasn't chamfer. Chamfer would work, but I came up with something that a dual purpose fix that you're going to get to see. So the horizontal 2x4s that are on the wall, you notice how they're staggered? They're not lined up at the same height as the adjoining wall. And there's a reason for that. That way they can overlap, and then you can nail the inside corners at the same time. These inside corners were tough to get. You can see me struggling to push the bottom end over till we get a tight corner. They never came together perfect either. They're probably like a 1/4 inch gap on that inside corner on two sides. But I came up with a solution, and you're going to see it pretty soon here, how to solve that problem. You could slide chamfer down there, but this is even better what we're going to be doing. The top of this wall, height of it is going to be 6 inches below that sidewalk that's along the building. That way when we do our next pour, we're going to pour a 6-inch lift over the top of this wall. And so we're going to dowel into it and bend some 90s off of it so it becomes one piece with the slab. So this is when I came up with the idea. We're going to take some angle iron and we're going to run it down on the inside corners all the way to the bottom. We're going to weld on some dowels that'll be sticking into the concrete. And that's what Sal's doing here. This is just a quick, on the fly kind of a thing. And the reason it's dual purpose, because he's got to do a grate over the surface or some type of enclosure over this. So now that he'll have this steel in here and it's anchored into the concrete, he can weld off of that, and he has something really good to weld onto. He doesn't have to drill into the concrete to get anchors now. He can just utilize this steel to weld from and get his grate or whatever it may be that he chooses to build on there. All right, I think I'm ready for concrete here. Let's take a look at what we've got. Here it is, about 7 foot deep right here. We've got this thing. We think it's ready for concrete right now, but there's only one way to really find out, and that's when we start putting the concrete to this thing. That's the true test. Take a look down in there, see what we got. Yeah, but I think I can go pretty much as high as I want to with this system. Now I just have to wait for pour day. All right, wait for the pour. It's gonna be magnificent. I think we're gonna get a lot of creaking and movement because my wedges on my ties aren't super tight. So I think it's gonna kind of spring back a little bit before she gets snug and hooks up, but we'll find out. And then I'm gonna hit it with the big vibrator and really give it the true test. Make sure you guys stay tuned for the next video, because that's gonna be exciting to watch the concrete go in this hole. Doing a 4,500 PSI. We're doing pea gravel. So there's gonna be a lot of pressure against these forms, and we are using a 1/2 inch plywood. You get a chance to see where it blows, how it blows, and what happens. Also, we're gonna strip it and take a look at all those corners, see what they look like in the next video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification button. That way you'll be notified as soon as we drop the next one. Bye.